What's up, branding experts? Arek here at Ebaqdesign, and welcome to On Branding Podcast. And my guest today is Jim Everhart. And Jim is a freelance strategist and writer who works with corporations and agencies to help them develop marketing, communication tactics, and campaigns. So he spent more than 4 decades in the marketing industry, and most of it at Godfrey Advertising, which is one of the largest B2B marketing agencies in the United States. And so today, we're going to talk about Jim's new book, Brand Vision, which I have right here. So the title is Brand Vision, The Clear Line of Sight, Aligning Business Strategy and Marketing Tactics. Hello, Jim. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Eric. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So in this book is basically for marketers and corporate executives alike, right? So in this book, you basically show us how to align marketing with the overall business strategy, right? And business objectives. So just for our listeners, just to understand what we are talking about here. So, problems like how to make aesthetic decisions when it comes to branding, the color, the graphics, the typography, but also what marketing tactics should we use? Should we make videos? Should we run Facebook ads, or maybe start a blog, print out brochures and do a trade show and so on? And if we write emails, for example, what our emails should say, what our websites should say. So how to be more strategic with the messaging, right?
Yes.
And also other things like how to plan and then justify the budget for our marketing, right? So I just wanted you to start off with a simple question: what strategy really is? Because people throw this, as you said in your book, people throw this term around to describe different things. So what does it mean to you?
To me, it means, basically it's an expression of who the company really is. That's the important thing for me. And that's why it's so important for the creative team to have this information, because they have a better sense of the company that they're trying to describe. And, the more we nail that down, the better the creative is going to be.
Right. So some of my takeaways from this part. So strategy basically, to many people, it means that we just have a thought out plan for doing something, right? But as you described in your book, the problem is that, when we think about marketing strategy, we usually think about tactics, which is not strategy, right? Like,
Right.
should we use Facebook or Instagram? Should we run like pay-per-click ads or use SEO, for example, start a blog and stuff like that. So these are tactics, as you point out in your book. So things like social media, PR, email, these are not strategies. So strategy
Right.
is the spirit behind all of this. So it needs to be like an overall strategy behind all of this communication. So it needs to be linked to each other. It needs to work together, right? So basically in your book, you say that strategy basically answers the question, who are you as a company? So it's basically your core purpose and positioning. So for example, I just wanted you to talk about a little bit about those three main positioning strategies that you described in your book. And by the way, as you guys can see, there is like a triangle, like a pyramid on the cover of the book. This is because Jim includes a lot of exercises in the book, which are basically, they look like a pyramid, right? So Jim, can you describe a little bit those positioning strategies?
Basically, this is just an approach based on, some of the big brain gurus of strategy. But what you really think about is there's really only about three essentially different ways a company can succeed and make money and be profitable and have
Mm-hmm.
build long-term competitive advantage. One is product leadership or technology leadership, and that's really it's a good illustration, like we would think of Apple or somebody like that. In the past, a lot of the examples use Sony, when they were in their heyday. And this is about a company that doesn't have to, but continually reinvents its state-of-the-art equipment, maybe makes its own equipment and its own products obsolete, but it focuses totally on improving and advancing the technology. And then there's customer intimacy, which is, you tend to think about like a company that builds its entire offering around how can I help you as an individual company? How can I help you as a customer achieve your objectives? And so there's not as much, it's totally wrapping your own company around your customer's effort. They use the example of UPS and its logistics offering. And then the last one is operational excellence. And here you tend to think of Walmart or maybe
Mm-hmm.
Amazon as
Mm-hmm.
being a company that really just absolutely, gets its processes ironed out to achieve either extremely low price, and that's the most obvious example, or you could use, like, maybe a chemical company might use operational excellence to drive, extreme product purity, like, absolutely executing just time after time, delivering exactly the same chemical with exactly the same composition and
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same, and that might not necessarily be the lowest price, but it's the product of operational excellence.
So these are those three main positioning strategies, right? And just for
Yes.
you guys, there is an illustration, for example, I believe it's on the page 20. It's right. It's right here, for example. I'm not sure if you guys can see. It's on page 28. But guys, in the book, you give us a lot of examples. So this is really helpful to understand the concepts, right? So just to sum up for our listeners, as you mentioned, and you have the whole section about this in the book, about those positioning strategies, because that's where everything starts, right? So we decide on those, we brainstorm with the team or with our client, and you actually walk us through step by step how to do it, what are some of the problems that you encountered with consulting people, and how to go about that. But just to sum up, so three main positioning strategies. First, it could be a product or technology leadership like Apple. Another example would be probably BMW in sport cars,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Or as you mentioned, Sony back in the second would be customer affinity, like UPS, for example, and the third would be operational excellence, like Walmart when it comes to price, or like Amazon when it comes to, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not the lowest price, but they definitely excel in operational excellence, right? So now let's talk about the second part, which is super important as well, which is about knowing our audience, right? So in order to, as I mentioned before, in order to write proper messaging and communicate effectively, we really need to know who they are, what kind of benefits they would relate to, like, so. And there are different types of audiences as well. So can you talk to us a bit about this? What are some of the most important considerations when it comes to defining our audience?
Well, sure. I mean, I think one of the things that we tend to forget is that at times we're overwhelmed by this, especially when you're dealing business to business, people get overwhelmed by the buying team and the fact that there might be like 5, 10, even 15 people or more. And when you're talking about healthcare, you need to meet the buying committee in a small, minor league baseball stadium. There are just so many people involved. And the first thing we need to think about is the fact that while there may be lots of people involved, there may only be one or two decision makers. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really important to know and understand who the decision makers are, and to make sure they're equipped with what they need to drive the process forward. The second thing is that the other people don't need all of the information that the decision maker needs, but they might need something specialized, like an IT director. We'd want to make sure that we understand that they get the information they need about the protocols that your product is compatible with, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. What communications it needs to work in whatever, whether it's a factory environment, especially a factory environment, but any kind of other IT landscape. And then the third thing is that we need to understand where somebody fits in the overall, what would you call it, marketing landscape, I guess. Like, for instance, are they an original equipment manufacturer, like a company that manufactures products, or are they a distributor, or are they some other partner of your company? And it depends a lot. Or are they an end user, for instance? And the difference, especially between an end user and an original equipment manufacturer, and we use a car as an example. A car manufacturer, the design engineer there is worried about, like, is it lightweight? Is it going to fit in? How's it going to fit into my manufacturing process? Whereas the end user is going to wonder, is it comfortable? You're talking about a car seat or something like that.
Mhm.
Is it comfortable? Is it going to wear well? Is this a look good? Those things like that. So it depends who you're talking to, and it helps to know the person's position in the marketing mix. That helps you understand a lot about who you need,
Right.
how you need a message to them.
Right, and you really break it down, like you really go into deep into your book because just as you mentioned, so there are different audiences as with this car manufacturer, right? So there's end user and other audiences in between. But really, so you break it down, all the possible scenarios and types of audiences. But what we really need to remember, my takeaways from this part is to just create personas, right? So we need to identify those people and then create personas for them so that we can dive deeper and we can understand this audience, what resonates with them, what kind of benefits, how we can connect with them, what should we say on our website, in our emails and so on, right? Okay, so since we discussed this, I think the next one is super interesting when it comes to our audience, which are usually designers, creatives, but also entrepreneurs, because the next part is about the creative, right? So the messaging, but also the design, right? The graphics.
Yes.
So, and here you said, quote, great creative begins with great strategy, period. No matter how fun or cool the creative is, if it's not on strategy, it's useless. And I couldn't agree more with this quote. So, can you talk to us about creative?
Sure, sure. I mean, and that's where I said, in a lot of ways, I felt like, at first I felt like a trader saying, okay, yeah, boy, your design has to follow the strategy, but what you realize is that marketing and design become marginalized if they're not really advancing business objectives. If you're really
Mm-hmm.
not helping the company to succeed, you might have a beautiful thing. It might even win awards. It might be great. But if it doesn't help the company succeed, I mean, you could, it's funny. I was thinking as we were talking about even the strategy, talked about following the strategy. If you have a product excellence company and you might have a great thing about how to emphasize price, and it might be beautiful, it might be great, but it could actually undermine the positioning and really hurt the company going forward. And
Yeah.
and so in fact, the better it is, the more it hurts. So that it's really important. And I think the creatives I know, the really, really good creatives I know, always do a really, really, they love good direction. They love definitive things. I mean, one of the things that's happened in my career over the years is an account manager would come back with something and say, oh, geez, they'd have this kind of nebulous thing. And as a creative director, when I was functioning as a creative director in those sense, I would never let that through because I've seen creative groups, they're going to focus on something, and as soon as they get into it, they're going to say, "Well, what's that mean? How am I supposed to work with that?" And they would spin and churn on that, and it was not beneficial to the end result.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the more definitive, the more clearly you state something, the better it's going to be for the creative people. And a good creative team will be so thankful and will be off and running as soon as, there's just so much wasted time when, are trying to be cute or trying to finesse something or trying
Mm-hmm.
to, not be clear. And I am, over the years, I've learned the hard way. Clarity is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Clarity, simplicity. Your design cannot get in the way of what you're trying to convey, right? And
Yes.
and your message. So those things definitely they need to work together. So okay, and then you talk about the story, the developing your story, and then again, on page 84. I have some notes here. You actually show us like how it all works together, right? Taking this pyramid, a kind of a structure, how we go from the strategic vision, how we support this with our reasons to believe, how we show our proof points, and then we go deeper and deeper into developing stories and so on, you choosing the right channels for marketing and so on. So obviously we won't have time to discuss everything on this podcast, but there are also two other very important parts, which is about the campaigns themselves and about the analytics, the measurement of those campaigns. So what are some of the most important things that you wanted to talk about, or maybe things that you see often people struggle with?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget when we first started having all the different things like Twitter and Facebook and all those, and Instagram and all these things. I mean, number one, people got overwhelmed, and people then also got into believing that there was this, oh boy, this rifle shot thing. If they just did this, there was this silver bullet that they were going to be able to go viral and create this, this whole groundswell of sales and success. It occurs to me that we'd be a lot better off if we started thinking about, I mean, to me, going viral on something is like trying to win the lottery, using that as I'm going to try and win the lottery. And some people do, and that's great, and more power to them. But what we need to do is focus on the fact the best thing we can do when we're faced with all these different techniques and all these different tactics that we can use is to say, okay, is to organize our campaign and understand that none of these things do everything. And that's a critical understanding. These things are made to be connected so that, it's from the very beginning. I'll never forget we had when there were websites, when people first came out with websites, everybody said, oh, wow, this is great. All we got to do is do this website. Well, not exactly, because we started saying it at the time, to quote the famous movie line, if you build it, they will come. That works in the movies, but it doesn't work in marketing. You need to get people to your website. So you need campaigns, and you need a campaign to find a way to get people to show up on your website. And whether it's email or whether it's search or whether it's online advertising or even, direct mail and, old fashioned stuff like that, you need some way to get people there. And so that once you understand that from the very beginning, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a lot of different ways that help you connect with your audience. Then you list them at the website. You put lots of detail, and even that, well, you have a site, but then boy, there's downloads, there's video, there's all kinds of things there. And then there's, how do I convert this person into a sale? And if you organize, once you understand that that's what I need to do to create a campaign, I need to have things that connect with people. I need to have some places that they are convinced, and then conversion.
Yeah, the CCC model, right? So yeah, and you break it down in the book how to actually, what does it mean in more detail, right? So the CCC model, yeah, I got it in my takeaways. That's definitely something that you should check it out if you want to check out. So this basically sums up how we should think about running campaigns, to first to connect with our audience, then to convince them, show them the proof, why it works, the reasons to believe, and so on, and then convert them, right? Yeah. Okay, so as we are approaching the end of our episode, of course, I'm going to link to the book. The book is available on Amazon, and I have a physical book, but you can also download the PDF, a Kindle version, right? But what's the best way to connect with you for people who are either want to work with you or just find out more? I know that you are active on LinkedIn. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm very active on LinkedIn. One of the things that I do on LinkedIn, I do like when I see something that I think will be interested or will be interesting to people who are in the marketing industry. I try and repurpose it, push it there. So it's kind of like I do some news aggregation there. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I also have the book brandvisionbook.com. I also have a site, small site, where and so it's another way to connect with me as well.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna link to that as well. Okay, Jim. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me, Eric. It was great. And I always enjoy conversations with marketers and people that enjoy discussions about how to make strategy relevant to marketing.
It was awesome having you today. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.